but I will test things on my paper because I'm just painting along, and I know that magenta over yellow will give us a really nice, should give us a really nice coral kind of peach ready colour, which is all these things that I see in here. Really good glow. So I'm going to use for my first attempt. I'm going to pick that magenta and see, because it could swap. I could move on to red if it doesn't sort of do what I want it to do. Does that? It's a bit bright actually. Let's see. It's a good bit of water brush. I'll just take that down a notch. Make it just slightly less strong. Magenta's always surprisingly strong. And just kind of do a nice wash of colour there, and I kind of stop it like I do there because I want to drag the rest of the colour down using my water brush to give myself a little bit of a soft finish. And I don't want to go over it too much because that's when you start moving it around and it starts drying in a bad way. So you don't get to do that very often. Like, you just get to sort of drag it down a couple of times and then you need to leave it. Because if it doesn't look like it's a nice graduation, you getting in there with your water brush some more is not going to make it any better. So the trick is to leave it alone, let it dry, and come back over it with a deeper colour later. So that's, of course, you want to start on a slightly softer shade than you need at the end result. And there's a couple of things, like there's some yellow ridge lines and things that I'd like to try and keep, so I'll just start running a few lines down lightly. Let's make it light. See, well, we've drawn them in for a start off, so there they are. So on the inside of those two pencil marked lines, I can just add a little bit more magenta, and then just drag it down with a water brush. So now are best to sort of let that dry a little before we do too much more down there, up there. So we can do this. I am carefully, if you do have a look down this end here, this ridge of yellow, this sort of yellow line comes all the way down, so I have left a tiny little bit of yellow exposed there. I haven't just made it one block colour. think that's all I want to do there for the moment. So it's still on magenta. It's quite a light wash, I would say, soft sort of candy pink now. Just going to go over our very bright yellow. Start changing that into the glowing orange that we see. There's a ridge line or of some sort, or a darker line that comes in through here. So I might just paint to that for now and sort of let the other side get developed a little bit later. And we'll just run that down there and soften the line. Here we go. It's not quite ready yet, but even quite often I will start as it dries to pop in some additional colour that just starts to build up texture as I go. You'll see what I mean in a minute. Like I'll come back to here. As it's drying and not completely dry, then you can sort of come back in and do a little bit of something. And I'm still following this sort of a line, a strong line down there, that side. Just follow that for the time being. I actually, when I'm painting, I'm sure you do it as well, you sort of make up your mind as what you're doing as you go. So if I haven't made up my mind as to something, or haven't thought about it, like that line, I just leave it. I guess that's where your blending comes in, you know, if you're reasonably good with blending, then you can do that. Just really, I'm also, what I'm doing is rather than putting on a lighter wash, I use my water brush to lighten the edge, almost as if I've done a lighter wash there anyway. That's possibly maybe, well, I wouldn't say lazy, but you know, like you just want to hurry up and get a bit of paint on. So rather than watering down a wash, I'll just pop it on and then soften it on the paper instead. So now that's starting to sort of get a curve going on there. It will slowly get a yellow over top, but you know, underneath is our curve, and that will show through on anything we do in the future. So that's okay. So with whatever's left on my brush at the moment, I just come back through and drag some lines just to see what it might do if it's dry enough to start showing. And that is that kind of manhandling of the brushes that I do. I have my nice, you would have heard me speak of them if you've watched some of my videos, that brush that I got from the, let's see, a stationery store, not even an art store. It says it's a number 6, which is an okay size. It could go down a little bit, but this is I don't even know, it says Sea White, I don't even know what that is, brand. Whether they even have the same numbering system as we do for sort of our more expensive, sable brushes, I'm not sure, but I like to grab it and either do that, being careful not to flick it all on the paper because that's kind of not the look I'm going for, but I have thought about that though. I mean, like, I've thought, gosh, that's going to happen, right? You do that with a toothbrush. And this is where, this is what this week is. This week is you can sort of do that blocking in and of colour. This week can definitely be sit down with, watch a telly and see how well you can get this little thing going on. So that's a colour, for instance. It's the strength of the colour. And then can we see right there? And I just do this. And that's what I do. This is why you do not want anything other than a $5 brush, and I really mean that. And it sort of it can come in different sort of shapes, but he basically does that. So that was that wash, but that's what you end up with. The difference is quite a lot. It's always good to test though. As you get use the brush more strongly, it comes out more. But if you do lightly, it just does these soft lines. And what I like about it is it saves you from getting in there with that really fine brush that that you have, and you're kind of trying to do as steady as little stripes of colour or lines. And it can last quite a while, like I've been chatting, right? And it doesn't sort of dry a lot. I haven't put any more on. I just go back and sort of re-smush it around and see if it gets anything interesting going around. And see that one there just sort of had 2 lines on the outside and a tiny little line on the middle. And I don't mind that because I can just go over it in different ways, and it might be an interesting line that I like on my paper. It'll be a vein then, and that's what I'll make it. Things like that. That kind of those happy little things that happen in watercolour. I don't know. Do you get those? They're more like distressing, but sometimes they're happy little things that sort of happen. So that is kind of, if I was a dog or a cat painter, I'd probably do this for hair. But I won't do that. So that's the process, as it were. And as this is sort of drying, he's dried a little bit more now. But I might like to come in and just run my brush down there quite evenly, following obviously that curve that we have on that petal. And any sort of line that comes in a little bit heavier, that's fine. If I miss parts out altogether, that's fine, because I can work them in later into something. I'm just sort of dragging, just starting where my highlight is, where I want it to sort of blend into nothingness. I'm just sort of starting at the top there and just touching the paper gently and bringing it down. See, there's a few lines there that have come in a bit stronger. That's nice. I might even sort of miss a little bit so that, say for instance, there is going to get a little bit lighter perhaps than elsewhere to show sort of the colour underneath. I like that. So that's that kind of, and still I haven't put any more actual wash on my brush. I've gone back to my palette and smudged it around where I've been doing it, and there's a tiny little bit of dampness right there and a tiny little bit of pink, but I haven't actually put it back into where the wash is. And it just seems to last forever. And there's a couple of little show-throughs where the yellows come through more than the pink, and I like that. Now the thing is, I've not got one, but, well, I may have one, but I haven't got a brush that's smaller, and I wouldn't mind getting a smaller one than the 6 for these areas where, as you get closer to the little areas, it would be nice to have just a slightly smaller brush, because it gets quite wide, and all I might do is tap on the edges. It gets quite wide, and you might want to control it a bit more, so I wouldn't mind a slightly smaller brush. Yep.
Did you dampen that brush at all, or is it completely dry and just the paint?
Well, I've been using it throughout. I think
this little splay brush that you've got.
Yeah.
We're dry brushing.
Yeah, it's well, it's just got the wash on it. I didn't. Yeah. It's just got the wash on it. Is that what you mean?
Yes, that's what I mean. There's no water.
No, just a wash colour. And you can see I'm having to actually press more now to get any colour come through. But then sometimes you can turn it over and you can just sort of do a lot of that. Do a lot of, not quite cross hatching, but the first bits of cross hatching, isn't it? The first lines. So, because as it gets a bit drier, you can just come in and do some heavier parts and a little bit lighter, and leave some gaps if there are gaps that have happened. Now, and that's kind of like the first run across. It starts to get softer, and you can really start to see some sort of form and shape, of course. But it gets better after you've done like a couple of layers, done like this. It can looks quite different now, and you can definitely start seeing some sort of some form and things. But you sort of need a couple of layers, I think, for it to have depth and things. And for you, see, I mean, I really don't mind that the brush is sort of not even together in a point. I don't know if you can see that there. I will turn it over and just maybe use just one of the little clumps that have a few hairs, and start picking out some interesting detail, leaving some gaps so that the bottom layers show through. I like doing that a lot. It really is very, very nice. I mean, you put on all these colours, you want them to show, right? So it's really nice to sort of, you know, to be a little bit less blocky, not to cover everything in the same colours. And see, because my paper's damp, with this brush, which, you know, I'm still working with it, and I haven't put it back into the, let's see what's on here in the moment. I mean, hardly anything, it's just a really soft bit of nothing, but somehow, I guess because we're working on a sort of slightly damp paper with our colour, you can just come in and move things around and really start to maybe pick out some nice detail here and there. Yes, certainly they have some nice ridges and lines, this petal, in different areas, so we could certainly imagine some of those and add those in. I do a bit of imagining. I mean, I don't paint everything I see, I add a bit here and there as well. So let's do that all over again. Add a bit of colour to my brush now. We're back into the just adding some colour. Smush it around. There we go. That will be my sort of working area. Now, you could test it on some paper. Remember, don't do what I do what I say. Test it on some paper, then we get back in there. And because at the moment this paper is nice and damp, it really is a good time to sort of work in some detail.
Do you ever go back in afterwards and paint in between those lines?
Once I've done it like this, I will come back in and I can do a whole nother session where I sort of do dry brush work again, picking some colours out. I'm not sure if I'd change colour or I'd just do another magenta. Maybe I might do a session with a little bit of red, perhaps like a cadmium red, just something warm red. Not necessarily will I paint in between the lines, but I might even do a layer over top, very gently at the end, and you'll probably see me do that somewhere, and we can talk about that. Because once, you know, you've got to be really gentle once you've put on a certain amount of layers. They've got to, we don't want them to move. So I reluctantly put on washes, but I will put on very light washes afterwards. But I don't necessarily come in and paint in between the lines, unless I might do this, you know, just sort of blend things.
You're out of focus a little bit, sorry.
Oh, am I?
You're more focused on your hands.
Oh, and is it not finished focusing anymore? I wonder if I can get it to focus on this.
Yeah, better.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, please do let me know if it sort of decides to focus on my hand, because that's not what we need. So lots of little strokes as well. That can work quite nicely. But I'm quite happy to sort of keep working through this when my paper is sort of damp. And there's some sort of highlights that have happened, and I'll leave those. Okay, so that's sort of a little warm up. I mean, I just kind of felt like doing that, so I did it, as opposed to I might not do it quite so soon. Normally, it's really as you feel, if you feel like the paper's behaving or you're behaving in the day. I'm just going to get just a little bit of that magenta again, and am I going to take it up here? Maybe I will. Let's see. I just want to do a few lines there because it's quite light. I'm going to blend on the paper and just let some of that yellow show through, but I actually want to just bring that down here to this edge. Okay. And of course we know that the shadow is always darker on that side, so I'll just pop a little bit more colour in the base of that curve and let that dry. So that is a very preliminary dry brush sort of technique over there. Like I say, we'll get into it darker a little bit later, but it's kind of the start of that. And I've got a bit of magenta on here, and up the top I can do a little bit of there's a curve there that I might just accentuate while I see it. Okay, so that's that done. It didn't do all that much, but it's kind of interesting that we started this first. I mean, already. But I would say if this week you could do the first layer, well, the second layer really, but the sort of strengthen that up, and we can then and if you feel confident enough to start putting in a little bit into here, that would be good. But certainly to practice being very brutal to some poor cheap brush, and just practice. Of course, you obviously want to practice those kind of curves, because we often want to do sort of a curve in a long, slightly unending way. It makes it easier than trying to join it as you go. So the longer the lines you can sort of do, however you sort of work out how to get your wrist resting so that you can sort of do these nice curves in different angles on a bit of paper. And if you get tired of it, change colour, pick a blue or a green or something, and make it quite dark and just practice. I don't even know when I started doing that, to be honest, and but I've been doing it for a little while, so you're going to need to catch up.
Use that technique on a lot of your paintings.
I have recently. I didn't on the poppies, but where is it? That was all I did on this one.